Tilo, are we live?
We are live on this platform, but I think we're waiting for the others. So I don't know if anyone watching on this platform. We're just waiting to get it. In case there is, we're just waiting to go live on the other platform. So bear with us for 1 minute or two. Okay, so I think we're all live now. So thanks. Firstly, I want to thank Generation Success for hosting this. I think it's such a great organization, and for me to be a part of this is something that I always want to contribute in this kind of efforts. And I think this is our very first time that we are doing this, at least part of Generation Success, and I'm glad today we have you, Samiksha, as our first guest to come and chat with me. Obviously, virtually, we live in a virtual world today, given the circumstances we're in. But with technology, everything is possible. So thanks, Samiksha. So before we dive deeper into all the interesting conversations we're gonna have, tell us a little bit about yourself, like who you are, like what do you do, what's your background, and where you based. Let us know.
Perfect. Hi, Dexter. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that Generation Success is letting me be on this platform today. Who am I? That's a big question.
I know, right? I know, right? When someone asks you, "Who am I?" and you go like,
My life
"Do I
story. Let me tell it to you.
exactly? Do I answer like my name and or do I just say like that's a very deep question? I don't even know who I am." But yeah, let's start with the easy one.
Okay, I'll tell you the stuff I do know. So I was born and brought up in the UK. My parents were originally from India, so they emigrated to the UK in the 70s. And they basically moved here for a better life, for their family, for their children. I work in law, and I have been for the last, 12 years or so now. I currently work for Freshfields Bruckhaus Deringer as a business development manager for the DR team. And previous to that, I was a investment manager in an industry that's quite new and booming, which is litigation finance. And I was someone who joined quite junior to that industry, but became quite senior within the 4 years that I was there. So that's something I was really proud of. And yeah, so that's a little bit about me professionally. That's a little bit about my heritage. But I've been part of Generation Success for a few years now, and I love the initiative around D&I, around empowering younger people, and I wanted to be part of all of that, and so that's why I'm here with you.
Amazing, amazing. So speaking of that, why you wanted to be a part of Generation Success, I mean, for me, what resonates with me, for example, is again, I actually went through a similar experience of being from a minority background. So, little bit about me. I'm from Malaysia originally, and then I lived in Australia for a couple of years. Now I'm based in Dublin, Ireland. So I've lived in different regions, but I mean, originally I'm still, I'm Asian. Visibly, I'm very Asian, right? So I went through my own fair share of challenges because of my background in gaining employment, in gaining attention. So I'm sure, you as not only someone, obviously you're born in the UK, but again, you're visibly, of course, as well, like you're from an Asian background and your family, I assume, migrated. So
Yeah,
you're the first generation.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, exactly. So your family or your parents might be a different, grew up in a whole different environment as you did, right? Like, so I'm sure you went through your own sets of challenges growing up, and also when you're transitioning from being a student to the working world, and then building up your career over the past few years. How long have you been working now since you finished university?
So yeah, like I think it's been, and this shows my age, around 12 years now.
Well, same, 11 years, so we're right about the same. But it's
Which was
okay.
scary.
I always say forever 21, don't worry about it. Age is just a number.
It feels
Uh,
like I graduated yesterday. So yeah, that's
exactly, right? Exactly. So 12 years, I think it's quite a long time. And I think you can agree that 12 years, I'm sure you have a lot of ups and downs, a lot of points where you're proud of, just like you mentioned earlier, how you climbed up the seniority level in about 4 years, which is quite fast especially in the industry. So can you tell us a little bit, like what 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 are some of the challenges that you went through in the past 12 years of your career, and how what part of those challenges was because or triggered because of your background, your gender, or yeah, just run us through.
okay. I'll try my best. I think, look, it's no secret that the legal industry is traditionally white and male. So I was entering an industry from the get go that wasn't, there weren't lots of people who looked like me, who had my name, who were going to be easily accepted. And I think that was evident from the start. I worked in some very traditional law firms over the years, and um, I think the industry's got better. And I think now, and I think we're going to talk about this later, that there is a platform now and people do realize this. And there's a lot more Asian and fame, very successful lawyers and doctors and leaders around now. So that's great. But when I started, that wasn't necessarily the case. And this is only in the last 10 years. So it was something that you have to kind of get past those challenges. I think there were challenges in terms of being female. People didn't always take you seriously. People didn't always respect you in the same way as your male colleagues. Being Asian, you weren't always expected to be part of the norms that the other like English and white candidates would be necessarily easily accepted into like colleagues groups and generally
So,
like given
so
work.
you're saying like because of your background, maybe you're not the type that they would expect. Firstly, you're female, and then also because of your Asian background, they typically wouldn't like, hey, let's go to the pub and get a beer after work. That you're not part of the group already, right? Like because the stereotype is already like you're not English. I'm going to use quote unquote, right? So was that the kind of experience, like in terms of the social norm, when you faced?
Yeah, I think the fact that I was born and brought up here did give me a was helpful, and so I wasn't completely. I know you came from Malaysia, was it that you
Yeah,
mentioned?
Malaysia. Yeah.
So it's completely alien. It's completely different culture as well. But there were challenges. There were times where you think, okay, this is a bit of a boys' club, or this is a bit of a everyone does everything in a very traditionally white way, and I say that being quite open to the fact that I had lots of experiences, good and bad. But there were times where I'm in a room with older partners who are very traditional, potentially a little bit racist, and you've got to step up to the plate and still define yourself as someone who's worth working with and kind of put aside all those biases because you know that you're worthy and you should be there. But not everything's in your favor all the time. And so it was hard. And you deal with lots of different personalities in a professional workspace all the time. And you've got to, I definitely realized that there were times where I did struggle, but I would then move past those times and lean into the good rather than the bad.
Did you ever feel like at that time, like maybe 10 years ago, that even though it's not pleasant to go through that, but did you feel like you had to accept like that's life. That's how it is. I just gotta swallow it and accept it because it is just what it is, right? Like we kind of accepted that that's the reality, and then it felt like we couldn't do anything but just to play along in that. Did you feel that way?
Yeah, so it was only in the last couple of years that I've heard the term microaggressions, that I realized were things that you said, exactly, little things and challenges that happen that are towards you because you're different. And actually, they do leave an impact. You do notice things. I remember still very vividly, there was one barrister who I met who said to me, "Oh, you speak very well. I'm really impressed by how you speak." Um, and at the time, okay, I was young and I thought, oh, that's a compliment. And afterwards, I was like, actually, that was getting at the fact that they didn't expect me to speak well. They didn't expect that
Exactly.
someone like
Exactly.
me would be able to like carry themselves.
Exactly.
And those things stick with you because I'm thinking about it now, many years later. But it was things that yes, you accepted, but I think now, because we talk about these things more, and there are more people that are open about these things, you realize how much it happened along the way, and how actually we shouldn't just accept that, and we should raise these points and call people out, not in a vindictive way, but in a way that makes a change and makes people realize this isn't
Yeah,
okay. This,
it's all about the awareness piece. But I agree with you because you know when previous in my experience as well, like of course I grew up my whole life or majority of my life in Asia. So when I moved to Australia, for example, the first thing that people always say, "Oh my God, your English is really good." And at that time, I did like you. I took it as a compliment, right? I was like, "Oh yeah, I feel good about myself." But over the years, like you said, I'm like, wow, because firstly, I introduced myself. So my name is Dexter. The first question I always get asked is that your real name?
mm-hmm.
Right? Because maybe they expect like Asian people, majority have like a Chinese name or more Asian name. So my name itself was questioned, like, or they think that, I probably wake up one day and gave myself that name. So, I always have to answer like, yeah, like I didn't choose this. My parents were cool enough to give me the name Dexter back in the 80s in Malaysia, right? Like I gotta kudos to them all the time for that. But I get that all the time. I get that, oh my God, you speak really good English. And like, what do you expect? My English should be horrendous. We speak English in Malaysia as well, like I think it's a lot of ignorance there. Like people don't really care to understand your culture or don't really care or how to gain more knowledge about other people's background, right? They just assume,
Yeah.
this is the default. I think that is the thing. Like over the years, just recently we talked about, because of BLM and the Black Lives Matters movement and everything. And only we talk about the white norm that we live in. I think 10 years ago, if we were to bring this up, it would have been a different conversation. It would be a whole different reaction, I feel,
Yeah,
you
no, I
know?
completely agree.
So yeah, it's interesting. Like, and then another layer to you as well, I guess, is being female in such a male-dominated room. It's a legal profession, especially, right? So, like quite similar to like investment banking and apparently in the insurance industry as well. It's kind of like quite similar. It's very male-dominated. Did you ever feel like you didn't have a voice? Meaning that did you ever feel like people didn't take you seriously because of your gender? And also your background.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think it was interesting for me because I was quite client facing. So I would have big clients coming in, big law firms, partners coming in, and they would be having a direct meeting just with me because I was the person who was making the deal. And and also sometimes people refer to me as Sam in the workplace. So they think they're getting a guy. They think they may be getting not an Asian guy as well. And then they walk in the room and there's me sitting there. And the reaction that you'd see on people's faces sometimes would be quite interesting because
Mm,
you'd see that all of a sudden their mindset had shifted, that they all of a sudden realized, okay, we're dealing with something different than we expected. And now we're going to treat her differently because she's not who I thought she was going to be, or she's she's a young female doing this, and this is quite serious male work, and it would be very annoying. And there were some people who dealt with it who really, really were very conservative, very backward in their thinking. And those were the clients that wouldn't get very far with me, to be honest. But the ones who I could build relationships with, the ones who did have the confidence, and the people who were just had that awareness that just because she's female, I was actually considered one of the best investment managers at my previous fund. So you could go to someone who was male and who was maybe not Asian or not from a BAME background, but that wouldn't mean that you were getting the best person to work on your case. And so I had to realize that my reputation and my actual ability came above the fact that I was female and the fact that I was Asian. But getting that across to the person on the other side of the table isn't always easy. And there were rooms where I felt very uncomfortable. And there were times where I was very lucky where colleagues of mine would step in and reassure and say, look, she's the best you can deal with her.
It's kind of sad a little bit when I hear that, because like you had to have your colleague come and advocate for you. You know, you couldn't have your own kind of like you know you're good, but just because of your background and maybe your gender, you know, that somehow got stripped away from you, and you needed someone to kind of like assure someone else to go like, you're actually good. Did it impact your own confidence, self-confidence because of that? Like, do you ever question, like, am I really that good? Or is it, you know, because obviously when we go through that time, you never think about, oh, because I'm female, that's why I'm getting treated this way. Or, you know, sometimes you just forget that, but you then question your own ability. You go, maybe I'm not that good. Have you got that situation before?
I would say there were definitely times when I questioned my own ability, but I wouldn't have said, I think I'm quite strong in the sense that I know that I'm
That's
female,
good.
I know that I'm Asian, and I wasn't going to let that hold me back. So I would also I would look at the other person and say, it's a shame that this person feels this way and that these biases affect how they operate, because this is a professional working environment. This isn't, you don't have to be my friend, you don't have to be my family, but the fact that that's what you're going to hold against me is something that
I like that. I like that because you had the confidence. I think but the thing is like, why I brought that up is because I'm sure whoever that's listening, or even young students or just people who are just starting their career, not everyone has that confidence. Because I can speak it from my own experience, because if you asked me 10 years ago if I would be sitting here chatting with you about this topic, I would have told you I'm not capable enough to do this kind of things. I was so insecure. I was doubting my own ability. I was always thinking that I'm not good enough because of all these things that came to me because of my background, not only because I'm Asian, of course, or I'm from a minority background, because of my, you know, I'm gay as well, you know? So like, I always feel like there's an element where I doubt myself because of that. And it's sad if I look back, but then again, it's all through this experience that make me who I am, right? But at that time, I really questioned, like, am I really that bad? Am I not good enough? Is that why I'm not chosen to lead this initiative? Or is that why it's easier for another person to get it? Just, you know, and I do think some people will feel that way. And I think it's an important reminder, like yourself, you know, you really have to talk to yourself to gain that confidence. But I think in this environment today, it's a little bit easier because it's well more spoken about, like all
yeah.
these kind of issues, you see. So moving on to the next one, you did say, you know, we talk about people who advocated for you,
Yeah.
who really helped you during the way in your journey, and you had a lot of proud moments. Like, so tell us a little bit about these people who advocate. Are they your mentors? How did you even find them? How did you find people to advocate for you?
I think, I don't know how I found them. I was very lucky. But there were, I think when you're part of a big organization or any organization, you've really got to find people that you align with. And there will be people who do provide confidence in you. I think one of my old bosses was really good at taking me under his wing and reassuring me about my ability. Because like you said, I did have times where I doubted my confidence, and I didn't know if I could be as good as they wanted me to be. And hearing that from someone that you respect makes such a difference. So I think looking for those people, and there will be lots of toxic people as well. Don't get me wrong. There'll be lots of people who say, you can't do it. I don't think that you're right for this, and that they don't believe in you. And it's kind of shifting your mindset to the people that you can rely on and the people who will give you real feedback and taking it on and learning from them, rather than leaning into the bad, because there'll always be a mix in this world of good and bad. So I was very lucky to find mentors that built confidence in me, who gave me praise, something that I'm not really used to coming from a Indian household.
Yeah, yes, I can relate to that.
But hearing that from people that I really respected told me that actually, yes, I can do this. And so I think that really, really helped me. And then I learned to always look for people like that, people who would boost my confidence. And I did something once actually that I heard from a talk. I used to save good emails, emails that said that you'd done a really good job and I really appreciated it, or I really valued what you did, and kept a folder in my email inbox. I do this now as well, that says good things. And so on those days when I lacked confidence, I would go to that folder and remind myself of the good stuff I'd done. And remind myself that people do believe in you. And so that things like that really helped.
That's amazing. I think that's a good, I will do that soon. I'll put out my good emails folder. I should, but that's great. I think sometimes we need a reminder. I think people need to remember we don't always have good days. You know,
Yeah.
we have ups and downs. I think that's the reality. And again, that is why I want to, one of my vision is through these chats is we want to talk about things that are not so pleasant, not just the successes that people see. And we got enough of that. We got social media for that. People only show their good things about their side, and I think we had enough. At least for me, I'm not on social media anymore, and because I don't see the value in it. Right? It's just people. But I like people who to be vulnerable, to tell me the real stuff, like to tell me that yes, it's okay to have a bad day, and how can I pick myself up? And I think I like that idea of like reminding yourselves that the many times that you did a good job, because sometimes we need that reminder.
Yeah.
And speaking of mentors as well, like so through Generation Success, of course they have mentoring programs. Are you involved in that in any way?
I've had mentees in the past, and I did also have a mentor at Generation Success.
Yeah.
So I have fully engaged with that process. And I think it's just satisfying, and it adds a whole nother dimension. Working with people who are kind of younger than you and who are rising up and going through the journey that you went through, that reminds you of all those vulnerabilities that you had, but also the fact that you can give back and like help someone through your experience, which maybe I didn't have when I was in their position, is really, really rewarding. But also having a mentor to talk through and talk about your challenges and talk about the things that you're finding harder as you want to move up, which is what we're always doing. We're always trying to move forward, was really helpful for me too. So I would highly recommend anyone who wants to get involved with the mentor program at Generation Success to
definitely the platform is there, and I'm glad for that. Or any mentors, of course, as part of Generation Success they have that, but I would always say having a mentor is really important. And then for people who been through a lot, like yourself, I always also believe in the idea of giving back, and that's why I also love mentoring people. So I do part of that in doing at work as well in our employee resource groups, where I do guide people who just started their career, and I love doing this kind of events because I feel like through all these sharing of experiences, it really helps other people to like relate to other human beings, So and human connection is always very important. So mentoring is such a great way to kind of give back. And that's what I believe. So, and then of course you get it in return as well. So it's a virtuous cycle. I call it. It's great, right? So as we reflect back, like again, we've talked a lot about you're starting and your 10 years, your 12 years of your career, how far do you think we've come in DEI, and what do you think we all should do more?
I think when we talked about this previously, and obviously looking back at last year, everything that's happened with the pandemic and with Black Lives Matter has been I think it's been an awakening in a big way for humanity as a whole, and for people to look at how they do things and what we were doing wrong for a really long time. I think with the Black Lives Matter movement last year, something shifted. I think people used to talk about diversity. People used to hear about these awful news stories about Black people in America being facing atrocities, and you would stop and you would feel bad, and then you would carry on, and that wasn't good enough. And also, it wasn't really affecting people beyond minorities. I don't think the wider population were necessarily concerned with it as much as people who related to it. Whereas with Black Lives Matter, people stopped, the world stopped. The protests that happened around the world happened because people started realizing how bad it was and how serious this was, and that it needed to be put on the agenda. I've seen in corporations and places that I currently work in, it is now on the agenda. It's raised on a regular. It's really sad that it's taken this long for people to take it seriously, but it's a really good opportunity at the same time that now there is this momentum. Organizations like Generation Success are getting more coverage as a result of the fact that more people are now leaning into this problem. And you also have these role models that I don't think you and I maybe had growing up, like Kamala Harris's VP. We have a Black business minister at the moment. We have a brown chancellor. Those are idols that we didn't have. And the fact that younger generations can actually look to these people and go, okay, they're doing it, I could do this, is really empowering. And so we've got to lean into that, and we've got to keep this going, and we've got to normalize the fact that diversity shouldn't be something that is an afterthought. It's actually part of the package of things that we consider all the time, and especially in workplaces.
It's so true, yeah.
I mean, you must be seeing it because you're part of such a huge organization.
Yeah. Look, I'm quite proud of the fact that, I mean, there's always more to do, but I think I run a lot of these initiatives at work myself, and I do these chats at work as well. And these are the small little things I feel like I can do, and I can contribute to it, because I think at work, one thing we always talk about is we don't want, like what happened last year with George Floyd and everything, and we don't want it to just die off after a year. That seems to happen all the time. 2015 we had before, and in 2016, and it just comes and goes. It's a trend. It's and here's the thing that irks me all the time. Every time when this kind of event happens, you see all these LinkedIn posts like, I stand in solidarity with my blah 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 and all that. Like, where are you guys now? It's great to have that exposure, but I think it's time for us to do something more than posting a social media post and putting hashtags on your Twitter. That's a good for awareness, thumbs up, but what's next? I want to see us changing lives.
Yeah.
So that is why I feel like conversations need to keep going. So I feel like, yes, it's good, but the momentum has to stay.
Yeah. It's not
effective.
Yeah, there's no point to all of this. There's no point to all this sadness and pain unless we can make a difference. And you've got to take action to do that.
Exactly.
It's fine to be an armchair warrior, but you got to actually get involved.
No action is too small. I always remind people that even learning about other people's culture in itself is a good start. And it's okay to make mistakes. I think a lot of people time when we talk about like race and even gender pronouns of all these things, people are so afraid to make mistakes. I think it's okay to make mistakes and just apologize and move on, because people know that you are learning. If you are showing that you're making an effort, I think people appreciate that, rather than just shoving it aside and go like, this is all irrelevant.
Yeah.
So very, very good point that you brought up. So speaking of COVID, I know, one of the things that you kind of led, voluntary led, is the sourcing of PPEs for the vulnerable, like the frontliners. So tell us about how did that come about? What happened, and then what did you do? Why did you do it? And then where is it now? What's the state of that efforts now?
Yeah, so that's actually a really nice segue into what we just talked about, because from Black Lives Matter, I think things that I learned in the last year is that you've got to act on things you're passionate about. Like we said, you can sit and complain about things all you want, but you've actually got to do things when you care about something. That's what makes your life meaningful, and that's what makes a change. And so last year, when COVID hit and no one knew what was going on and no one knew what this whole thing was and how dangerous it was, for me, it became quite a personal issue because my family are doctors, so they were on the front line, and that's that really scary reality that my brothers and sisters were going to work not having PPE and potentially putting their lives at risk. I considered it as they'd moved from doctors to soldiers and they hadn't signed up to that. And all of a sudden, this was really real. And we were seeing so many healthcare workers passing away really sadly. And it was really, really, really scary. So at that time, I had basically started contacting a lot of people I knew in my network about PPE and where you could get it from and where you could bring it into this country and if it was available and how we could distribute it. I was very, very lucky in the sense that I then got introduced to someone else who was doing the same thing. And this is a guy called Manoj Rasani, who had a company who he then pivoted. And together we came together and we essentially created this volunteer organization. None of us have met to this day, but we all talk all the time because of the pandemic.
I know, I can relate to that.
There's 20 of us in this organization who came together, and in days, it was also amazing how quickly it all happened. Within days of us being on LinkedIn all the time, of us being on group chats all the time, we created this directory. I put out a post on LinkedIn and it reached thousands and thousands of people. And I was searching for PPE supplies in the UK. And what we did is we learned about how to get it, like what the grades of PPE are. We learned all about the different levels of PPE. We learned about the pricing. We were trying to get the best prices for hospitals, care homes, hospices around the country. And we set up a website and we then created this directory so that people could urgently contact us and we could then provide them with urgent contacts to get PPE out to them. And we, in the end, got around 900,000 pieces of PPE across the country to the front line, which was amazing efforts. And none of us had any experience in any of this, but it was just, you realized at that time as well how many people wanted to help, and how people just stepped up. Like, people were calling me that I've never met before, providing me with stuff. People were donating, people were putting money into this, and it was just humanity at its best. And
I know. I was gonna say, I think COVID, no matter, I mean, don't get me wrong, a lot of people are struggling, a lot of different challenges. But one thing that got out, I think we got out of it, was the humanity side of people. I mean, we have extremes, the bad ones as well, don't get me wrong, but I feel like a lot of people are more compassionate. A lot of more people are more empathetic because of all this. And I'm glad to hear that you were not alone. It was really a group of people with the same goal coming together because of the shared humanity. And I like that.
Yeah, it takes an army to do things like this. It can't be one person. I can't stand up and say it was all me. It was people just coming together with a shared purpose, and we all cared about this. And you could do things in that time and in that moment that weren't probably possible in normal times. But it was amazing to be part of, and it taught me more and more that I wanted to always engage with things that I cared about. And so I think that's actually, it's enlightened something in me that now makes me want to act whenever I see things that need support. So yeah, it was a really great thing that we did, and I'm really proud of it.
I think that's a great, for me at least, it is a great reminder for me. Like if I am passionate about something, if I want to make a difference in something, you just start somewhere and then look at how it grows, right? All you did was, I have an idea. I'm going to reach out to one person, and then that person then refer me to someone, and then before you know it, it just boom. And then
Spiral.
and this is the kind of impact that we want to see, that I'm talking about. Like we are changing lives. We're not just sitting here, whining about I have to be at home because of lockdowns, but we are doing something, and I like that. And where is it now? Like, is it still ongoing? This whole
So
initiative.
luckily there's a lot less demand for it now, so we haven't had to keep it going as actively. We are on hand. We still have the website. We still have the contactability. And I think in the last few weeks, we're helping some people get suppliers around things like gowns. But
Okay.
we're still an active community. We still all talk, and
Yeah.
we all get excited when things happen in the press, and we need to get behind them. But it lasted around 6 months last year, and
Yeah,
since
the
then,
initial, right? The initial months of COVID, because at
yeah.
that time everyone was like, what is this? What's going on? Everyone's pretty lost. So yeah, that's great. The other thing as well, and now this is one of the last things I want to chat with you before I let you go, is a very important thing because it's also related to COVID. I think because of COVID, the topic of mental health and well-being is also, other than DEI and all the movements, I think mental health and well-being got so much attention as well. And you have a blog that talks about mental health and well-being, right?
Yes.
So and again, because of your background, I'm tying back to everything that we've spoken about because of your background as well, because I come from an Asian background. Growing up in Asia, mental health and well-being is a taboo. You don't talk about it, okay? Like if you tell someone I'm going to a therapist, they might think you're crazy,
Yeah.
So it's such a sensitive topic to even bring up. But now I can't even go a week without talking about mental health and well-being, right?
Yeah.
So interestingly, you come from quite a similar background, but even though you grew up in the UK. So firstly, tell us, why did you come up with this blog about mental health and well-being? What was the drive and purpose? And how did your family take it? Like, of course, because your family, like your parents, they grew up in India, right? Like, it's different. They don't talk about mental health and well-being as openly.
Totally. Okay, so we've covered lots of parts of my story, and mental health and well-being is definitely part of it. I started the blog this year because I finally had the time to do it, but I always wanted to do it. In my early 20s and later, probably in my mid 20s, I had some really full-on experiences with mental health. I had severe anxiety. It affected my ability to sleep, my appetite. And it happened when I was really, really working in corporate environments that were very stressful.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Long hours,
mm-hmm,
trying to get ahead in life, trying to be a professional.
mm-hmm.
And there was a lot of stresses going on. And like you said, it wasn't something that was talked about. And so when it happened to me, it wasn't something that was obvious. Like I didn't understand what was going on. And I actually found it really hard to fully understand and admit to myself that something was wrong. For a long time, I just thought, okay, I'm dealing with something in work and dealing with this in my life, and
And
maybe
it's
I'm just
normal.
it's
You think
normal.
it's
It's normal.
normal, you're right? Like, it's okay, it's work, you get stressed, you get anxiety, that's fine, nothing wrong. I think that's the kind of
Yeah,
environment we grew up in.
you ignore it is basically the
Yeah.
thing. But then it started showing up physically within me, and it wasn't something I could ignore, to be honest. It was intense. And so I needed to understand it. I needed to get to grips with it. I needed to talk to people. I think you talked about family there. I was lucky because my family's in healthcare. So my dad's a doctor.
Mm.
He had seen the signs. He knew what was going on. And he actually used to reassure me all the time, this isn't uncommon for people of your age and your generation, and you will get better. I still found it really hard to believe that something was wrong because, like you said, you don't think anything. Like you think that I don't want to admit that something really bad's happening because maybe something's wrong with me or maybe I'm crazy. And it took a lot for me, but it was because now, yes, everyone talks about mental health. But when it was happening to me, it wasn't a big issue. It wasn't something
Mm.
like people used to tell me, yeah, law is stressful, and yeah, but you didn't really talk about what that stress was, or
Yeah.
like how it affects people. And I remember at the time, like I went into overload and trying to educate myself, and I was trying to find all these sources, and there weren't any blogs from people that were relatable. There weren't any stories other than like, yeah, do some exercise and eat better and sleep. There wasn't stuff that was like, I am someone who this has gone through, who's gone through this, and this is how I dealt with it. And you can get better, but it will be hard. And there wasn't that voice. And I really needed that at that time because I needed some relatable stories. And when you did start talking about it, when I finally started opening up about it with my family and friends, other people came out and said, I've been there. I know what you're going through. You'll be okay, but it's going to be hard. And this happens to people. And I was very lucky. I got a lot of support, but the fact that at the time I was scared to even bring it up because we weren't used to talking about it. It wasn't something that I could just casually bring up over dinner and everyone would be very comfortable with it. I think now, in what everyone's going through, the whole world, we have to deal with it because otherwise it's not like too many people are going through this. But still, there's a lot of cultural stigmatism around it. There is a lot of barriers. And that's really sad. And the reason I wanted to really start the blog, which is mythinkingbrain.com.
Yeah, go visit. Yeah.
Check it out. It's still early days, but I've started. Is because I wanted younger people, especially now, who are dealing with stuff, like to know, to understand a little bit about that there are coping mechanisms, there are things that will make you feel better. Getting treatment, getting help is not a taboo, and you should do that for yourself, for your bet. You will do so much better in life if you understand this stuff about yourself, because mental health is just like health. It is health. You deal with yourself when you have a virus. You also need to deal with yourself when you have issues going on with inside you, in your thought patterns, how you talk to yourself, how you deal with things like stress and anxiety. It's really, really important. And I was passionate about trying to bring that forward to people. So
that's amazing. I think that's even more important now because everyone's all at home and they go through different challenges, right? Some people may have a big family with a lot of children to handle while working, and then some people like myself, I guess, because I'm alone at most of the time, I got no one, so it's a whole different challenge as well, and it affects your mental health. But I totally agree. Like, you know, again, if I were to recall 5 years ago, I was, you know, people think that I had a great life. I think people always see the good things, right? Because on Facebook, we tell like, oh, this is my life in Australia because I was living in Sydney at that time. And people were envious because I got to move there. I got a, you know, pretty good job in a good company and all that. But deep down inside, I for some reason, I wasn't happy. I was like, you know, like you said, like, I feel something's missing. I think in a virtual depression at that time because I always remember this point in 2018 or 2017. I woke up at 8 a.m. on a Saturday, sitting on my couch. Even though I have all these friends around me, I have a job and everything. I could afford to live by myself in a one-bedroom apartment and all. I remember sitting down on my couch, just cried and go like, I don't know why I'm alone.
yeah.
It's just crazy. You know, I mean, now I think about it, it's like, obviously now I'm way better, but at that time I didn't know what was going on. You know, and then like, just like yourself, I didn't
So scary.
realize.
So scary. If you can't,
Yeah,
if you're like, who am I? What's going on with me? Like,
yeah,
this is not who I am. It completely shakes you.
yeah,
That learning and understand, like you said, looking back at it now, you completely get what was
yeah, of
happening.
course, of
But that's
course.
because you've gone through it. When you're going through it, it is like, it's a shock to your system. And
Exactly.
you really need reassurance that you'll get through because
And you
otherwise,
don't know what to do. You don't know what to do. You don't know who to reach out because if it's so stigmatized, it's so hard for me to even say. Like, imagine going to a friend and go like, I don't know, I just cried this morning. It's something that I don't know if your friends know how to respond to that as well, right? So it is. I think the message here is it's normal. I
yeah,
think we want to just tell people it's normal, and you know, having the support there. And I think because of the fact that now it's more open. I think it's easier to talk about it as well, but don't be afraid to bring this up and talk about it, because it's not, you're not alone. I think we would just want to say we're not alone. And then, and do check out your blog as well to see what are your tips, right? I mean, it's great to share all these things and talk about it so that we don't stigmatize mental health or well-being anymore. You know, it's time to do that. So,
and to be honest, just on that last point about, okay, maybe your families don't talk about it and things, I sometimes look at my parents' generation, I think no one ever talked to them about it. And
yep,
they had a lot on their plate. They had to deal with things like moving from a different country and like starting afresh. And don't feel that, okay, no one else talks about it and this is my problem. Realize that maybe they too, I mean, sure, they all have had their fair share of it too. And it's actually normalizing it, like we said, so that everyone can be open to this stuff. And you don't have to be so defensive and be so protective that this doesn't happen to you, because we're all human and this is part of the human experience. So,
yep. And don't think you're alone. I think that's the most important thing, because I thought I was alone. I thought I was the only one who's going through that. And like, it's so strange. There's something wrong with me because I cry by myself on like randomly, you know? So it's not, you're not alone. I think you need to remind yourself that.
totally.
All right. So it's a solid almost 45 minutes of chat. I knew we were gonna, I was aiming to go about 30 to 40, but I really thank you for firstly volunteering and participating in this. And I really had an incredible chat with you. Before I say goodbye to you, what are the, for people who are now trying to transition into their corporate landscape, like students who are going to work or going to graduate, or people who are in early stages of the career, given all the things we've talked about, from coming from a diverse background, talking about the whole COVID situation, and talking about mental health and well-being, any tips, any advice that you want to give to people?
So Dexter, I thought you might ask me that question. And I read a lot of things, I listen to a lot of things, and there was something that I had on a podcast recently that really resonated with me. And it was a quote that said, "Do what you can with what you have from where you are." And I think that is so true of people like us and people who are starting off and trying to get ahead and trying to understand all your challenges. Don't let those biases, don't let the fact that you're female or gay or black or brown or Asian, whatever, get in the way of who you are. Make sure that when you're coming to the table, you're coming as the best person for the job. It's not about what your characteristics are, it's about your ability. And just focus on that. And from where you are right now in your life, lean into what you can do in the future with what you currently have, the resources you currently have. What you don't have, you don't have. You can't control that. But you have, so we're very fortunate people, and lots of people have lots of great things, great support, great people to talk to, people, you might have the opportunity to work in a big organization. There are lots of things that you can do within that. So really lean into those good things. And if there is a circumstance where you've got a lot of challenges, they will make you stronger and better. So also realize that there is good in those things. And yeah, I think if you try and see that from a young age, you'll do really, really well.
I think the one thing I got from what you just said is that there's no point focusing on what we can't change, right? I think a lot of times we forget that. We know for the fact, but a lot of times we just don't practice that one thing that we know is like we can't change other people. But it's important that we change our own mindset. Because if I myself keep believing that, I'm probably not going to get promoted because of my background, for example, then you are internalizing that belief, and that's not good. I feel like what we can control is we change our own beliefs first. I mean, we can't change other people, right? But I think the starting point is, like you said, is like we got to put all these things aside and believe in our capability. I think that's a starting point, So thank you so much, Samiksha. I really enjoyed this. This our first chat, and you are an incredible first guest. So again, thank you to Generation Success for having us, and till the next one. So hopefully, maybe, who knows, we will chat again another time.
Definitely. Thank you, Dexter. This was really, really enjoyable. And thank you, Generation Success.
Thank you, everyone. Take
Thanks.
care.